Hello everybody and welcome back to GameRant.com. I'm Anthony Taormina, editor-in-chief of the website. So recently we were invited by Universal Studios out to Orlando, Florida for a preview and then the grand opening of Epic Universe. I actually had two separate visits, which is what the video footage you're gonna see overlaid over my narration. It includes a look at the technical rehearsals and then also the grand opening festivities that we saw at Epic Universe. For those that maybe aren't familiar with Epic Universe, it is Universal's fourth park within the Universal Studios kind of group. You have Universal Studios Florida, you have Islands of Adventure, you have Volcano Bay, which is a water park, and now you have Epic Universe. Epic Universe is easily one of the biggest things to happen in the theme park world in quite some time. It's one of the first North American parks to open in close to, I think, 2 decades. It is a massive undertaking for Universal, and now it's open for the public to see, and we have seen it ourselves. Let's go through the park, talk about it, say what I do and don't potentially like about Epic Universe, and give you a rundown of everything that's available. Now, walking into Epic Universe is kind of a experience unto itself. There's this giant, massive tower at the entrance that they call the Kronos. It's got the different medallions for the worlds, which we'll get into in a second. It's a photo opportunity that you can't help but be stunned by. And then it sets the stage for what you experience within Epic Universe, which is this idea that you're walking into this central hub world called Celestial Park, and then you're branching off through these portals into different worlds themed after popular IPs. So those worlds are How to Train Your Dragon, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Dark Universe, which is Universal Monsters, and Super Nintendo World. So those are the 4 worlds that encircle Celestial Park, and you pass through these kind of cool portals with icons reminiscent of different things from those movies or video games or properties, and you walk through and then you enter essentially a new world. It's supposed to be this transportive experience of entering a universe unlike anything that you see in the center. And I will agree that walking through those portals is quite an experience. But first, let's talk about Celestial Park. So if you imagine that Epic Universe is kind of like a big donut. You have this circular piece, and the entrance, we'll say, is at the bottom, and then at the top is the Helios Grand Hotel. It's this massive hotel that you can see off in the distance. Guests can stay at it and they get an incredible view, if they get the right room, of the park. It has a rooftop bar, it has some How to Train Your Dragon themed rooms. It's got a lot of amazing things going on, but it is one of the first, if not the first, hotel that's essentially built into the park. It is connected to the park in a way that hotels usually aren't. You can go downstairs and essentially walk into Epic Universe, assuming you have a ticket. And then the rest of the donut is filled with food spots and restaurants and merchandise and some rides. So there are 2 key rides that are part of Celestial Park. Number 1 is the Constellation Carousel. Now this is like the biggest icon of Celestial Park because it's this big dome that sits next to a water feature, which is incredible in and of its own right. It's usually shooting up water, and at night there is a potentially nightly water show. We don't know quite how regular that's going to be. As part of the grand opening, we saw both a water show and a fireworks show, which I'll talk a little bit at the end of the video, but it's a great place to just hang out. One of the things that Universal has been saying is that they want to put the park back in theme park, and I think that picturesque dome of Constellation Carousel, the water, there's some places to sit, gives you more of a walking through a park feel versus theme park feel. That said, you will definitely see some of the classic theme park elements, but it does give that park feel. Within Constellation Carousel, that dome is a very unique carousel. It's not your traditional, this is a circular kind of setup with different animals you ride attached to a circular spinning thing. it's sort of free flowing. All of the animals or the things that you ride are based on different constellations. Like there's a lion, there's a bunny rabbit, and you sit on them, but they are not connected to anything. The poles just kind of go up into space. And while the whole platform turns, it also has little mini turntables that turn themselves. So there's this kind of interesting rotation concept that happens. It's not a spinning ride, it still moves at the pace of a carousel. The ride vehicles actually go higher than you would potentially expect. And there is kind of a forwards and backwards interplay. You're not just constantly moving in one direction. It combined with the music, at night specifically, there are lights on the floor and above and on the different ride vehicles. It creates a really incredible experience. And I think for a carousel, which a lot of classic theme parks have, or they have some version of it, I think this is by far the best version. It is a modernized, very cool, sleek carousel concept, but it doesn't venture too far off from what you would expect of a carousel. It's also super kid-friendly. One of the cool things about the ride vehicles is that I think almost all of them or most of them have a 2-seat concept. So there's also, you just sit down on a bench type vehicles, but there's also on the vehicles, there's like a bigger seat for an adult and a smaller seat for a kid. So you don't have to do that thing where you stand next to your child and have them ride the carousel. You can actually ride it with them, which I think is a very neat experience. Constellation Carousel, though it maybe is lower on the tier of priority for a lot of people, can't be missed. I highly recommend it and definitely see it at night. Now, the other kind of big ride at Celestial Park is Stardust Racers. This is, you can see it from a distance. It is the roller coaster of roller coasters. I'm not a big fan of roller coasters, and once I rode it, I was actually really enthralled by it and really excited by it. It is a very incredible coaster. Over at Universal Studios Florida, they also have the Velocicoaster, which is, I think, the roller coaster that they hang their hat on. Stardust Racers has a unique concept, and maybe it's not as intense as Velocicoaster, but it does have some really cool concepts. So the idea behind Stardust Racers is that it is a dueling or a racing coaster where two coaster cars are actually moving in sync, sometimes out of sync, with each other and dueling, racing, moving side by side, crossing over, doing a lot of crazy maneuvers. And it is a launch coaster, which I'm not going to spoil anything, but it has one of the best launches that you've probably ever experienced in a launch coaster. It does some very cool things. The marquee feature of Stardust Racers, beyond the just going alongside the coaster, being able to look across the way and see other people screaming, and the hang time on this ride is incredible. You are only restrained by a lap bar, and you feel as if you are going to fly out at any moment. So keep that in mind. It is insane. But the marquee feature is what they call the celestial spin. And it is this moment where one of the vehicles will turn upside down and essentially be above the other, and then the other turns upside down. So more or less, when you're looking up, or what you would consider up, you are seeing the tops of the heads of the other vehicle. It is incredible. There are some really cool moments, especially at night, just like Constellation Carousel. I think the lights that are on the vehicles of Stardust Racers and not being able to see the track as much as you're lifting out of the air is a little bit unnerving, but that celestial spin moment is really quite something. And Stardust Racers, I think now, again, I'm not a coaster guy, but people that do love coasters say that Stardust Racers is up there with some of the best roller coasters out there. And the other cool element is that it's 2 tracks. One's yellow, one's green, and they each have slightly different experiences. Some of the track is the same. You're just on the left side or the right side. And some of them go in different pathways, more hang time. Some people say the green side is more intense. I have ridden both sides in different configurations. I will say being in the front or the middle, the back is a little hard on you, but being in the front or the middle of the green side is probably the most intense. So if you're maybe unsure, maybe I recommend going on the yellow side, seeing if you like it. I think you might, and then jumping up to the green side, and then you can kind of mix and match where you want to go. But Stardust Racers, it did kind of make me a believer in coasters. I do think that part of that has to do with the fact that it doesn't have that anticipation of a drop. It just starts with a launch, a very cool launch, mind you. And same with the Velocicoaster, so you don't have that anticipation. You're just in the moment, and then you really have no time to figure out what experience you're having, because it's eventually over and you're just praying that you don't fly out of the vehicle. In addition to those 2 rides, Celestial Park is filled with a ton of unique restaurants. There is the Oaken Star Tavern, which is a barbecue restaurant, incredibly delicious. During our preview event, we were able to sample a ton of food from there. They have this mango bread that's really good, but if you're a fan of barbecue food, brisket, pulled pork, things like that, they do have vegetarian options. Oaken Star Tavern. For a more upscale experience, there's the Atlantic restaurant, which is seafood focused, has a beautiful view that looks out into that lagoon or lake of Celestial Park. And that is, I mean, it's stunning. They have these delicious scallops, but it's more elevated. You're looking at, your sit down, have a nice meal, maybe have a glass of wine, relax with the view. That's the Atlantic. It is offering that view. Granted, you're at a theme park, so you're probably going to be in shorts. You're in Florida, so you're probably going to be in shorts, depending on what time of the year. So it's not elevated at the supreme level, but it's nice of Epic Universe to offer this experience that is at the top tier in terms of restaurants. Just a little bit below that is the Blue Dragon, which is the Asian restaurant. It offers things like ramen and pot stickers and fried rice. Also very delicious. Very cool at night. This kind of dragon sculpture is at the entrance and it gets lit up with these neon blue lights. It is very cool. And the interior of the restaurant has that same kind of neon aesthetic. It's very reminiscent of going to like nighttime Asia, but it is not specific to one region. You can get a lot of different things from there. One of the other restaurants is Meteor Astropub. This is where you can get stuff like chicken and waffles or grilled cheese and tomato soup. The chicken and waffles, super delicious, but it is a little more of your traditional fare. You're looking for your handhelds, you're getting your more traditional stuff. You're not going in there so much to be a little adventurous in your cuisine. You're looking for the comforts. But Meteor Astropub, from a distance, very cool as well. And then I think the most iconic potentially of the restaurants within Celestial Park is Pizza Moon. Now, Pizza Moon's exterior is this giant pizza face that's licking its lips. It's a little gross, if you look at it too closely, but it's themed after that early film that most people will know. I'm not gonna be my film snob, but where, you land on the moon and the moon is actually a face. You go inside, that aesthetic continues. The pizza oven is like a giant rocket. It is for the kids, for sure. Like, it is the restaurant that you go into and you say, hey kids, this is so many different things to see. There's these little puppets, or I don't know, they're like look out of something from a pop-up book moving around. They're clearly inspired by that film as well. There's a lot to see. And then it's got pizza that is very delicious, but also not just traditional pizza. There's pizza with a ube crust. There is pasta, there is salad, there's everything you could possibly want from an Italian restaurant, quick service restaurant at a theme park. And it's all really good. It's some of the best pizza. I think pizza is really challenging for theme parks, especially because you make a big pizza and it sits out there. But what Pizza Moon does is, I believe, makes most of your pizzas to order, because you can order just a full pizza, smaller or bigger. So I think that's one of the benefits. Maybe that might not result in as quick of food, but it is certainly delicious. There are also a few little installations throughout Celestial Park where you can get things like hot dogs, ice cream, a few things like that. So Celestial Park has you covered as far as food options if you don't want to go into the individual lands. It has a kind of lower tier ride and a higher tier ride that I think are both incredible in their own right. And there's obviously places to get merch and things to see, plenty of things to take pictures of. You take pictures with the Helios Grand in the backdrop. There are 2 kind of cool statues at the entrance and by the hotel of these kind of mythical Greek figures. Helios, very cool. So lots of stuff to see there. But admittedly, the central reason that you're going to Epic Universe are those 4 portals and the lands that lie on the other side of them. We'll kind of go through them as I did during my grand opening, which was in order. We got to go into each land, spend a good amount of time there, eat food, see merch, ride rides, and if they did have shows, see those shows. We're gonna start with How to Train Your Dragon Isle of Berk. We're starting with it, but it is by far my favorite land maybe not my favorite ride, maybe not my favorite, specific element, but it is so cool stepping through that portal and walking into Berk. If you've seen the How to Train Your Dragon animated films or the live action film, which is just right around the corner, it's such a transportive moment. The music plays, that Powell score is incredible. There is a water feature in there with the Isle of Berk in the background. There's lots of hand-carved wood elements. There's a play area for kids. There's 3 rides. There's a show. There's some of the best food within the individual lands. I think Isle of Berk is at the top for me in terms of both the design, the selection of rides, and the food. I think it encompasses the biggest accomplishment for Epic Universe, in my opinion. I think it delivers this wow experience. So if you do want to see any of the lands, I know there's a different land that gamers will be targeting, but if you are going to be going in for this wow moment of like, what is Epic Universe going to deliver, I highly recommend starting with Isle of Berk. It also has the most rides, so if it's a busy day, the diversity of experiences available is top notch. Food-wise, you can't go wrong with the cones. The Hooligans Grog and Gruel has this PB&J cone, which it stands for, I know you're thinking, okay, mac and cheese plus peanut butter and jelly doesn't make sense. It's not peanut butter and jelly, it's pork bacon jam. It's so good. The cone element is this soft, kind of almost like combination between like a bagel and focaccia. It's got a little bit of garlic to it. The mac and cheese is creamy. The PB&J element is nice and sweet and tangy and savory. It combines very well. So you get a little scoop of the mac and cheese with the PB&J, you get a bite of the cone. It's all very delicious. It is potentially, I think, the #1 thing to get in all of Epic Universe. Go into Isle of Berk, get that PB&J cone. They also have a big mead hall that has your sit-down restaurant elements. It's very cool. It's designed like a Viking hall, and you can get, your meat platters with all kinds of more familiar meats. You can get meatballs with lingonberry. You can get big hunks of meat. And then they also have, at the Spitfire Grill, they have these skewers. They have a chicken one, a steak one, a shrimp one, a few other ones. And they're usually on top of rice or vegetables. It's all combined. Very tasty if you just want to eat your meat on a stick. I really enjoyed all of the food that I tried from Isle of Berk. Merchandise-wise, I think Isle of Berk also has a lot going for it. Obviously, How to Train Your Dragon sets up nicely for offering you a good diversity of toothless merch, but also different Viking things to wear. I think there is quite a lot to buy there, and I think you're going to be very happy if you are a How to Train Your Dragon fan and you're looking to pick up some exclusive How to Train Your Dragon merch. In addition to the rides, which we will get to, there is a show called The Untrainable Dragon. And this show, it's a musical show, not too long, but I'm not gonna spoil anything, but it incorporates some of the most impressive animatronic or puppetry that I have seen in a show, period. Not just a theme park show, just a show like on Broadway. There is a moment in the show, and maybe if you are super curious, you can look it up online because there are videos. That is simply breathtaking. I think some people that are fans of How to Train Your Dragon are going to cry. It is very cool. I highly recommend checking out The Untrainable Dragon. It doesn't follow the storyline of the movies. It's a side story, so you're not just watching the story of the movies again. You are getting your own experience, and that puppetry work and the songs, I think, are really, really well done. The set and the staging is very, very good. And if it's a hot day, what can beat a little air conditioning and a respite from the hot Florida sun? All right, let's talk about the rides. The rides in How to Train Your Dragon run the gamut. So you have the Fire Drill, which is the water ride currently that exists in all of Epic Universe. You gotta have a water ride, but it's more of a competitive interactive ride where you're using a hose to shoot these targets. What you're trying to do is basically put out fake fires on these targets. They spin as you hit them with your water gun. You pull back on a little lever and your gun launches it. You sit on opposite sides of a Viking ship, you and I think up to 8 people, maybe 10, and you're trying to shoot these icons that have fire on them. But then there's also these icons that are blue X's, and if you hit those make some of the interactive elements go, and they do potentially get you wet. There's not a lot of moments to shoot the other Viking ships, but you can do that. So there are a few instances where you are going to get wet. Do you necessarily need a poncho? if it's 90 plus degrees in Florida? No. If it's a little colder, I would recommend a poncho because you can get very wet. Also, if you don't shoot any of those targets, your boat is not going to get hit. But I think with a combination of 10 people and the chaos of just everyone trying to shoot targets, you're going to get wet and you can get really wet. It is, I think, one of those rides that you should experience. It's not necessarily one that I would say you should experience all the time. Depends on whether or not you want to get wet, how hot it is, and things like that, because you are in the sun quite a bit. The other kind of smaller ride is called Hinck's Wing Gliders, and it looks like something you would see at a fair. It's this big giant arm with I don't know, like half a dozen or maybe a dozen vehicles that have little wings on them. And it spins in a circle but moves kind of in the parabola where it swoops down and then swoops up. And you're in these vehicles with wings on them that have handles, and you can pull and turn the wings, and that will tilt your vehicle. The people that work at Epic Universe say that you can spin and do a barrel roll multiple times. The ride is pretty short, and in most of the experience that I've done, I've never been able to go upside down. I've seen people go upside down, but usually they do it like once. They're lucky enough to get upside down, and they usually don't have the momentum. But the people at Epic Universe say you can spin multiple times. I don't know if that's a case of maybe the ride time was longer for them, but it is something where you perfect that motion. I'm sure there'll be YouTube videos of like, here's when you need to lean this way and lean that way, but you can flip upside down. So what is essentially very kid friendly of just moving up and down and you're moving your wings can become more intense if you can get that motion and flip upside down. Definitely take a look at it and see if it looks like something you can do. Definitely worth a try to see if you can go upside down. And then zooming throughout Berk is Dragon Racers Rally, which is the coaster for Isle of Berk. It is a launch coaster. One of the cool things that I think Universal does in all of its parks is it doesn't just do the traditional beginning to end coaster concept. Stardust Racers is a beginning to end coaster concept, but a lot of the coasters throughout the Universal Park do this thing where sometimes they go backwards, sometimes they stop. If you've ever been on Hagrid's Magical Motorbike Adventure, you know that does all kinds of tricks. And Dragon Racers Rally is an example of that. It has some moments that I will not spoil that kind of venture off the A to B point, but it is, I think, a mid-level coaster. It's a great introductory launch coaster for kids who maybe have never been on a coaster before. It doesn't have any intense drops. It moves really quick and twists and gives you a little bit of the G-forces. It has some animatronics. It has a story. It plays music. And it lets you see Isle of Berk in a way that you don't get to see it when you're just walking around. So I recommend it. I think of the three rides, it is my favorite from Isle of Berk. I do think that an Untrainable Dragon is the must-see thing, but I think that the Dragon Racers Rally is the must-do thing, and then the cone is the must-eat thing. Overall, How to Train Your Dragon Isle of Berk is just, it's incredible. It offers this sense of space, this sense of design, this cohesive land with a lot of variety of experiences that I think Epic Universe will eventually get there. I know that it seems like they have expansion plans for some of the lands. There is empty plots that they will eventually use, but Isle of Berk feels the most complete, and it is a great place to start. How to Train Your Dragon, if it is one of your favorite movies, it's one of my favorite animated films, you are going to love Isle of Berk. Next up is Super Nintendo World, which for us gamers is going to be the must-visit destination in Epic Universe. I will say that Universal Studios Hollywood also has its Super Nintendo World, and there's also Universal Studios in Japan has its own Super Nintendo World, but the Epic Universe version, as well as the Japan version, blow the Hollywood version out of the water because there's just a lot more going on. The design of Super Nintendo World, it's like stepping into the Mushroom Kingdom and also stepping into Donkey Kong Country. We'll get there. It is like, it turns you into a kid. You go through that green pipe, you hear the warp sound, the whoop, 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 noise. You walk through Peach's castle and then you step out and you just see Bowser's castle and thwomps going and piranha plants and Goombas around. There's just so many different things. And then you walk down the stairs and you're immersed. You're surrounded by the Super Nintendo world, the Mushroom Kingdom. There is a ton to see. One of the cool things about the Super Nintendo worlds is the power-up band. So bringing that interactive element, that gaming element to the world is this power-up band. Does cost money, you have to buy it, you have to sync it with your Universal app. But what you can do is put this on your wrist, and then there's a ton of interactive elements throughout Super Nintendo World. There are question mark blocks to hit, you collect coins. There are little mini games to do. You can do these individual mini games that are sometimes simple touchscreen elements or a little more involved timing-based things. And then you can collect keys. You go into Bowser Jr.'s castle. There is a ton to do just with the power-up band. I know it is that added cost, so some people are going to be very skeptical of it. But if you do have the finances to get a power-up band and you have a kid that loves Mario, you gotta kind of do it. The power-up band makes for an even more fun experience within Super Nintendo World. Food-wise, got some tasty treats. There's Toadstool Cafe, which is this indoor restaurant where there are screens around with little toads running around cooking you food. At certain points, Bowser's airship attacks. All the food is Mario, Luigi, or Mario the brand themed. Like Mario's burger has a little mustache on it, has mushrooms. There's a piranha plant caprese. There's a lot of different crazy cool decorative elements. A little bit of burger, a little bit of Italian for Toadstool Cafe. And then there's also a shack where they sell these shell calzones that are themed after Yoshi. There's a red one that has some tasty Italian meat and some marinara in it. And there's also some really good smoothies. There's an apple melon smoothie themed after Yoshi that's quite tasty. A little sweet, but quite tasty. Good food to get there, and tons of merch. Nintendo merch is far and wide available around the globe. So I don't know how much of it is unique to Super Nintendo World, but there is a ton of stuff. The store, the main gift shop, has so many decorative elements. There's also Zelda in there. There's a little hidden Pikmin, but there's some Zelda elements in there. There's not a ton of Zelda merch. It is mostly focused on Mario, but there is so many different things that you can buy themed after Nintendo from Mario and Donkey Kong. Plushes, shirts, popcorn buckets, all kinds of crazy stuff. It's hard not to break the bank when you walk into those gift shops because there is so many different items that you are 100% going to want to buy. In addition to just being a very cool designed land, lots of themed food, great merch to buy, there are multiple rides to experience in Super Nintendo World. That's where Super Nintendo World in Florida deviates from Hollywood. Hollywood just has the Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge, which if you've read my Game Rant coverage of the opening of Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge, you know that's a very cool ride, but I will talk about it. But I do want to talk about the rides that are specific, at least in North America, to Epic Universe. They're also available in Japan, but they are Yoshi's Adventure, which is I would say kid-friendly ride, low stakes. You're just moving slowly through an area. What you're doing is looking for these 3 colored eggs. You have the buttons for the colored eggs on your vehicle, and you're looking for the colored eggs while you're enjoying some Mario sights and sounds. Again, very low stakes, gonna be very kid-friendly, especially young kid-friendly. Lots of just bright colors in the queue, bright colors in the ride itself. It is perhaps the tamest of all of the rides, but I do think it's worth experiencing just so you can get a different vantage point of Super Nintendo World and also take some great pictures. And if you have some youngins, they will enjoy it more than any of the other rides that they can't go on. Okay, Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge. If you haven't seen any of the previous coverage of the Hollywood version, the queue itself is absolutely packed with Easter eggs. There is so much to see in the queue. There is the various Mario Kart trophies that you know and love. There are little details, references to Bowser. There's a construction of Bob-ombs and bullet bills. There's just so many things going on in this line. It may be a long wait to get on the ride, so it's great that there are so many things to see, but it is an incredibly well-designed queue. I think Universal, specifically Epic Universe, has raised the bar when it comes to queues. There are some fantastic queues around the world in various other theme parks. This is, I think, a masterclass in how to design some queues within a theme park. And I think Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge, for gamers at least, is incredible. Then you get to the ride, and the ride uses augmented reality technology. So you wear this visor, And then on the ride vehicle is another kind of screen with lenses that you pop onto the visor, and that lets you see AR elements. So you're driving through in a Mario Kart, you're racing Bowser, you're trying to get to the end first, but on your vehicle, you can turn it. So there'll be times where it tells you to turn, and then there are buttons, and you shoot shells at the bad guys. You can see your friendly racers like your Toads and your Yoshis and your Marios, but then there's also all of Bowser's children and Bowser and some other, baddies sprinkled throughout. You get to see so many of the iconic elements from Mario Kart, from going through like the Haunted Mansion and going through underwater section with, that classic music, and everyone's favorite Mario Kart track, or one of the most iconic Mario Kart tracks, is also well represented. No spoilers. It's a great ride. It's got that interactive element. I think theme parks are now going more towards offering at least one ride where there's a competitive, interactive, it's more like a game and a ride than it is just a ride. And Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge is a great representation of that. If you are a Mario Kart fan, there is a ton for you. But even if you have no affinity for Mario Kart, you just remember playing it as a kid, or you've played it a little bit, it is still a super exciting experience. Doesn't move too fast. It has some twists and turns that you might not be expecting. Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge, very cool. Now, Super Nintendo World. All this Mario stuff would be, I think, a great land in and of itself. But then off to the side, you walk over and there's Donkey Kong Country. Whole new sub-land essentially split off from the Mario elements of Super Nintendo World. Again, that is another experience. You're walking in, you're seeing the golden monkey temple in the background. You're seeing the roller coaster, which is called Minecart Madness, going on. You see Funky Kong's gift shop, which is out of his plane. There's a meet and greet for Donkey Kong there. I didn't actually get to see Donkey Kong, but he does come out and you can meet and greet him. There's just even more going on. With your power-up band, you can do a bunch of the interactive elements. There's a bongo game where you're trying to let out the rhino that you can ride in classic Donkey Kong games. There are the KONG letters to collect. And then food-wise, there's the Bubbly Barrel, which has this really kind of crazy concoction that is more or less a float with pineapple banana ice cream covered in caramel corn and toffee in a waffle bowl. And then that is sitting on top of a cup that has a pineapple soda that you can kind of spear the cone with a bigger straw and drink the pineapple soda and have that. It's just a crazy concoction. And then if you want to pay a little extra, you can get a collectible DK mug. So you can get this collectible DK mug that your float will come in. It's, I think, $5 extra on top of the price of the float. Highly recommend it just because the novelty of this DK cup, but it is incredibly sweet. It may be a good refreshing thing to eat on a hot day, but also, your mileage will vary as to whether it appeals to you. It is a lot. I found it quite delicious, but some people might find it a lot. Now, the main kind of marquee element of Donkey Kong Country is the Minecart Madness ride. Now, unlike, your traditional coaster, which has a track, following the track, and in other Universal rides, maybe you're stopping or dropping, this tries to capture the spirit of the minecart levels of Donkey Kong in that the track is missing in places. So it actually uses a ride system where the vehicle is attached underneath the track. So what you're seeing is not actually what you're riding on. You're actually riding on a different thing. But it creates this cool kind of concept of you're launching into the air, you're landing on the track is broken, you're moving side to side. I will say this, the ride is quite jerky. When I rode it during my preview, which was, I think, about a month or two ago, basically a month ago, was less jerky. It kind of shifts you side to side, and that's a bit much. When I rode it during the grand opening, it was a little more rough, and I think over time, because of the way the vehicle is designed or the way the ride system is designed, I think that's going to be a little rough for people. So know that. If you have, some chiropractic issues, maybe not the best ride for you. But from a visual standpoint, going along that track and seeing the broken elements, there are some cool little gags with animatronics and things like that. Also, I should mention, in the queue, Cranky Kong, a very cool Cranky Kong animatronic is in there. He talks to you. So while you're going through the Golden Temple, you'll see Cranky Kong, and it's not to be missed. But on the ride, you'll see some of the other Kongs: Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, Daisy Kong. And it's a pretty intense roller coaster at parts, but also very cool, not too long. And I think the vehicle is a novel concept. Do I think it maybe needs to be smoothed out a little bit? Yes. Is that gonna be appealing to a lot of younger kids who, maybe haven't developed back problems like us older folk? No, they're not gonna care. They're gonna be like, that was so awesome. They'll probably laugh at the parents that are gonna be like, ugh. And maybe that is in and of itself a great reason to ride Minecart Madness. Overall, Super Nintendo World. I know I mentioned that Isle of Berk is my favorite. Everyone's gonna wanna go to see Super Nintendo World. It is such a cool realization of the Mushroom Kingdom and Donkey Kong brought to life. There is a ton to do there. Even if you've been to the Super Nintendo World in Hollywood, Universal Studios Hollywood, you haven't seen nothing until you've seen the Epic Universe version, because it is bigger in size, bigger in scale, and there's a lot more to do and see as well. And the food is quite good. Next up, we have Dark Universe. Now, Universal Monsters are near and dear to my heart. I love the Universal Monsters, so I was very excited to see Dark Universe, and it did not disappoint. Even though I mentioned Isle of Berk being my favorite land and Super Nintendo World being very incredibly designed, I was most excited to see Dark Universe. So walking through the portal of Dark Universe, you are transported to the world of Darkmoor. Victoria Frankenstein, which is Victor Frankenstein's, I think, great-great-granddaughter, she has been doing her own experiments. She's got this massive castle in the distance. This kind of gothic town surrounds it. There's smoke effects happening. There's people playing the violin. Igor's walking around. The Invisible Man's walking around. It has this kind of small, quaint, oppressive, gothic town feel. Maybe that makes for the smallest of the lands. An expansion can change that, but I think just this vibe that it gives off, especially at night, is very, very cool. Lots of great picture opportunities. You can go in a coffin. There is quite a few cool things to do as well, including painting your face to look like a monster. Food-wise, you've got a couple different options. There's the Das Steakhouse restaurant, which is your sit-down restaurant, and it's where you can have kind of these kind of scarier, spookier dishes. There's like a burger with black bun. There is on the dessert side, there's like a dessert that looks like brains or a little coffin. You can have this pork belly with this sauce on top that kind of looks like blood. It's got a lot of different dishes that are meant to look either spooky or gross or violent, but the vibes in there, there's these really kind of dark and kind of scary for kids. Paintings around the chairs have this kind of ornate design with these gnarled, almost looks like metal bats kind of carved out of them. The vibes are spooky in Das Steakhouse. So if you are a fan of Universal Monsters and that kind of vibe, I highly recommend going into Das Steakhouse and just sitting in there, even if you're not gonna like eat a ton of stuff. I will say the brain, I think it was called La Baracata. It's like a panna cotta dish, very delicious. Other food options, you've got a little stand where you can get a Frankenstein face pretzel. You can also get these cinnamon bites, which were quite delicious. They got a little cinnamon sugar, a little icing on them. They're just a quick little cinnamon bites. I think they're called warm-hearted Cinnabites. Very delicious. And the pretzel's good too. It comes with a cheese sauce. Looks like Frankenstein's face. So if you want a picture, that's a great option. They do a Shrek pretzel in Universal Studios as well. So I feel like they're building off of that. And then though Das Steakhouse is the place to sit down and be, if you want that kind of spooky vibes, there's also the Burning Blade Tavern. It's a big, giant windmill that at specific times catches fire, has crazy music going on, and spins throughout the day, but catches fire. Looks incredible at night. I wasn't able to capture the burning blade on fire at night, but I did get some video of the burning blade catching fire. So hopefully you're seeing that. And then inside, it's like a Monster Hunter bar. It's a bar where monster hunters would go. So you see all these heads of monsters, and you can get these colorful concoctions. You can get some drinks. You can get a pretzel that basically looks like a steak, very garlicky with a garlic dipping sauce. So much garlic, nobody's gonna want to kiss you. And just like have a cool bar experience. They do have mocktails I will say one of the cool things about Epic Universe is they have quite a diverse selection of mocktails if you're not an alcohol drinker, and they are all quite tasty. One of the ones we tried can be purchased in a little science beaker. It's got this like neon green color. Very cool. So in addition to stopping off for food, checking out the sights and scenes of the town of Darkmar, you can go in and pick up some merch. I spent a lot of money in the merch. You can get items themed after all of your favorite monsters. You can get Frankenstein's monster, obviously, Bride of Frankenstein, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Wolfman, Mummy, Dracula, you can get them all. If you have a favorite Universal monster, I think they're all represented. They have, a lot of them have their own little stations within the gift shops with shirts and plushes, some that are more cutesy, some that are a little more gothic and scary, spooky vibes, cutesy vibes. You got the gamut there. And then also you can pick up this vinyl soundtrack of the World of Dark Universe that is created by Danny Elfman, who you know from a lot of Tim Burton's films. He's an iconic film composer. He did the music for Dark Universe, which you will hear throughout the park and within its marquee ride. So there are 2 rides within Dark Universe. The big one, the one that you see off in the distance that is within Victoria Frankenstein's castle, is called Monsters Unchained: The Frankenstein Experiment. The queue has so much storytelling going on. It sets this idea that Victoria Frankenstein has been continuing the work of her great-great-grandfather. She's been capturing the monsters, she's been studying them, researching them. There is like a vampire bat that's in this crazy like electricity capsule. There's the original Frankenstein's monster, his skeleton or part of his body there that's being studied. There is some found footage of looking for the different creatures and how they captured them. There is a ton of storytelling, little bits and bobs throughout the line. And then there's also 2 kind of pre-show elements. One with Igor showing you how the ride vehicle works. If you've ever been on Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey in Hollywood or in Florida, it's that same type of ride vehicle where 4 of you are sitting in this set of seats, kind of like ski lift seats, and this crane arm is attached to the vehicle and it can twist you and turn you, even turn you laying flat on your back, maybe even like at an inverted angle. It's pretty crazy what they do with the vehicle in this ride. Forbidden Journey does some crazy stuff. This goes to a new level. And then there's an additional pre-show where an animatronic with a projection face of Victoria Frankenstein is telling you this idea that she's captured all the monsters and now she wants to eventually harness the power of Dracula, get him under her control. And then this animatronic for Frankenstein's monster comes out and blows you away. It is one of the coolest animatronics. I think the animatronic work overall in Epic Universe it's the best you will ever see. But that Frankenstein is gonna be, for a lot of people, one of the first they see, and they're gonna be like, wow, the motions and the movements and the detail and how realistic it looks. Obviously, I think some people are gonna, be very dismissive of it, but I was so impressed by that animatronic. And then going into the ride and seeing all the animatronics, there is so much going on. But it sets a great scene and it establishes, the story of the ride. Getting into the seat of Monsters Unchained: The Frankenstein Experiment, you are just like thrust into the danger. Animatronics, projection screens, fire, a little bit of water elements coming at you. So many different things are going on. There's an animatronic for almost every Universal monster. There's some crazy cool projection screen elements that continue the story, blend things together. The way that they use that ride vehicle to create kind of these jump scare elements and twist your perspective, give you this alternate look that you didn't really get out of the Harry Potter ride. They do some very clever things, but I think the main reason that Monsters Unchained inevitably is my favorite ride at Epic Universe, one is because I love Universal monsters, but it feels like a scary, spooky ride. There aren't a lot of dark rides that are able to kind of create that vibe of being scary without using the intensity of a roller coaster. Using jump scares with the ride vehicle is extremely well done. The visuals and the way that the gags combine the animatronics with the screens, how like their movements continue. It tells a very complete story. That Danny Elfman score is incredible. I just loved it. I wrote it so many times and was picking up new details from the very beginning to the end, just seeing how it all works together. And again, Universal Monsters are near and dear to my heart. So I was destined to love this ride, but I really loved it by the end. It's so fantastic. The other main ride at Dark Universe is called The Curse of a Werewolf. It is another example of Universal Studios taking what looks like a traditional roller coaster concept and doing some crazy things with it. So basically what you're doing is in each of the ride vehicles, you're sitting back to back, 2 by 2, side by side, and each of those ride vehicles can twist, can spin. So you're actually going through a roller coaster that does have its own surprises, no spoilers, but you're also twisting. So based on like your center of gravity, the weight distribution, the vehicle can twist. I've ridden it a bunch of times to try and see like how you can make it spin more than other ways. I really don't have an answer for you. We tried back to back with nobody next to us. We tried a full car. We tried all kinds of different orientations, and sometimes it spun a lot, sometimes it didn't spin at all. But if you get it to spin, it makes the ride way more intense than it is. It's a rather short roller coaster, has a cool gimmick to it. That is that twisting, but it has another cool gimmick to it. It is a little more intense than the How to Train Your Dragon roller coaster. So it's a little notch above there. But again, just Universal playing around with concepts, taking this, okay, I see the roller coaster track, that doesn't seem very long, that doesn't seem very special, and then making it special through the design of the ride vehicle and some clever gimmicks. Look, I'm not gonna pretend like Universal Monsters didn't make Dark Universe even better for me, but I do think stepping into that world, especially at night, this is going to be true for like all of Epic Universe. See it at night if you can. The colors and the lights bring it to life, especially on Dark Universe Castle. The power on the cables on the castle will pulse and make loud noises throughout the time as Victoria Frankenstein's doing some crazy stuff. There is just so much about stepping into that world that is cool, and I think Monsters Unchained is just the best, in my opinion, dark ride. Although there is a competitor within Epic Universe. And finally, we visited the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Now there are additional Wizarding Worlds of Harry Potter within Universal Studios Florida and Islands of Adventure. You can go to Hogsmeade or you can go to Diagon Alley. Now you're being transported to 1920s Paris, magical Paris, where the wizards and witches of the world are adventuring. Stepping through that portal, this is a massive land. It has this kind of scale of walking down a Parisian city street with buildings in the distance, kind of oppressive in that way, but not in a bad way, just oppressive in that you are walking through tall buildings and you're seeing cool signage and little shops and stuff, some facades and some restaurants and stores that you can go into. It is really cool. Obviously, I know that J.K. Rowling's Wizarding World carries some baggage, so if you don't want to go into that world, no one would fault you. But stepping into 1920s magical Paris is very, very cool. In terms of merch, you've got a lot of variety of things that you can currently already pick up. I know it's 1920s Paris, but a lot of the things that you can pick up are more Harry Potter Wizarding World than they are 1920s magical Paris. There is a shop with sweets. There are places that you can stop in and get a wand. I'll talk to you a little bit more about the wand in a second. But I do think that going through this land has that feel of walking through a Parisian city street, but with a Wizarding World magical twist. So about that wand, like the power-up band, you can purchase a wand from, there's a store called Cosme Ecajor, I believe is how you pronounce it. And these wands, they do exist in the other Wizarding Worlds, but there are different spots throughout the land where there's an icon on the floor and you can interact with items in a window or on the street and make them do magical things. Like there was some kettles and they could send out steam. You could talk to a wizard lady. You could do a few different things. I don't have a ton of footage of that because I couldn't get my wand to sync with my app in the moment. So definitely, if you are going to purchase one, try and get that set up before you go into the Wizarding World. Don't make the same mistake I did. But similar to the power-up band, there is this interactive element of walking through and finding all the symbols. You'll most likely see a ton of people standing there, but there is a map and there are helpful things to show you what you can interact with. And it does bring that magical element to life. We did mention the merch, tons of merch to pick up. And then on the food side, if you haven't had butterbeer by now, if you've been to a Universal park and you haven't had butterbeer by now, you gotta try butterbeer. We did a video with the Warner's gift box for the season of butterbeer. I love me some butterbeer. I love the butterscotch flavor of butterbeer. There's a few different ways you can get butterbeer. You can get butterbeer hot, you can get butterbeer cold, and you can get butterbeer frozen. Frozen is my butterbeer of choice. It's kind of like a little bit of a slushy vibes to it. And then they put this kind of foam on top. All of the butterbeers, I believe, have the foam on top. So just sweet enough to be a little too sweet, but it's perfect. And I am never disappointed when I get butterbeer. It always feels good to, stop by, get a butterbeer. You're in a theme park, and they have a little kind of cool barrel shaped cart in the middle of the street where you can get the butterbeer. And I got frozen butterbeer, and it was delicious. There is also a few different restaurants and bars. So there is La Café Cerise, where you can get some French inspired dishes. You can get a butterbeer crepe, which my new favorite. Though I like drinking butterbeer, a little bit of butterbeer crepe is always delicious. And then you can get some other French dishes as well that are like an eggplant baguette, steak au poivre, or like a kind of meat dish with an au poivre sauce. And then there's also a more Germanic or Eastern European restaurant called La Goblet Noir, where you can get like corned beef, you can get Jaeger schnitzel, you can get some things that you might see more in like a Germany. It's a little darker and spookier in that 1920s magical Paris. It's like their version of Diagon Alley. It's a little seedy over there. And then Bar Moonshine, you can get some fun alcoholic or non-alcoholic drinks over there. Kick back, enjoy yourself. Okay, the two kind of main things to see/do within the wizarding world of Harry Potter within Epic Universe are the show, Le Cirque Arcanu, and the Harry Potter and the Battle at the Ministry ride. Le Cirque Arcanu, just like Untrainable Dragon, does a lot of things that are impressive on a technical level. The way that the show works is it has a pre-show, which has its own kind of like little bit of magic, little bit of stage performance, little bit of circus. And then you go into the main stage and you sit down and you watch, no spoilers, a very cool set of animatronics, very cool of like technical stage conversions. There's a lot going on. It is a combination of like a circus show, a technical show, and then a Wizarding World story-based play. It does factor into Fantastic Beasts, so it's not as Harry Potter vibed as it is Fantastic Beasts. But I think even if you're not a fan of Fantastic Beasts, I do believe that what you see in the show is very cool. You'll hear a lot of oohs and ahs as the show plays out, not just from the performers, but also from what happens on stage. There's just a lot going on. And again, if it's Florida in the summer and it's 100 degrees or something, nothing can beat a little air conditioning. Le Cirque Arcanu is a great show. And then there's the Harry Potter and the Battle at the Ministry ride. This ride begins in a queue that is simply the most arresting queue that you will have ever seen at a theme park. You go through the flue. There's a little kind of fun smoke element and color element. And then you step into the Ministry circa like the 1990s in the Harry Potter era. Don't think too much about the transporting element from the 20s to the 90s. They just do it. Harry Potter is still, the marquee selling element. So you need to have something involving Harry Potter. So you step into the Ministry of Magic and it is incredible. The scope and the scale and the size of this initial lobby. And then as you continue through, there's just so many things to see. Little animatronics. There's Higgledy, which I think is Dolores Umbridge's house elf or just somebody that's related to Dolores Umbridge. There is just so many little elements and then big elements to see. You're going to spend a lot of time there because I think it's going to be the most popular ride at Epic Universe. So it's great that they have built a big queue that can house a lot of people, keep them out of the sun. But also, you're just gonna run into people that are taking pictures and videos every single step. There are so many things to see, so many Wizarding World details, just a lot of cool things going on. But also it sets up the story, which is this idea that Dolores Umbridge is on trial. She's presumably going to be convicted, but things go awry and you end up on a ride with a lot of crazy elements. So Harry Potter and the Battle at the Ministry ride itself, much like Monsters Unchained, it uses a combination of animatronics and screens to move you through this vehicle. It's a little bit like the ride vehicle from the Guardians of the Galaxy or Tower of Terror, that drop vehicle, but it moves kind of up and down, has like shaking drops. It's not a drop ride. So if you're not a fan of Tower of Terror, Guardians of the Galaxy, Mission Breakout, you don't have to worry about that. Much like the queue that leads you to the ride itself, scope and scale is incredible. You are seeing these massive scenes with these animatronics that look super real. The projection screens are so crisp. A lot of people will say like, I didn't know what was real and what was just on a screen, what was animatronic. I could have swore that was a person. You're gonna hear that a lot from people coming out of the ride. I think that there is a great momentum and a pacing to it. There's a lot of cool sights and scenes that are related to Harry Potter. I will say that the Golden Trio were not involved, so there is audio recordings and all the work done on them is not original performances, but Dolores Umbridge's actor Imelda Staunton, she records a whole new performance. There is just no feeling like being in that wizarding world, and going through this ride, it feels exciting, but also comforting, which is weird, but then scary as things kind of go crazy. They do a lot of impressive things. I think Monsters Unchained, for me, animatronic and projection stuff is smaller scale, and I do like the work there that feels like in your face. Whereas Battle at the Ministry, everything feels bigger, the spaces feel large, and so you feel like you're in the midst of this crazy battle at the Ministry that is happening in front of your face. It just offers a different type of combination of that simulator experience, but I think it's still very incredible. And I don't blame anybody that say it's like the top ride in the world now, because it is incredibly impressive. Overall, I think the Wizarding World of Harry Potter and Epic Universe, it has a lot going for it. I think the show and the ride do a lot of the heavy lifting. The food is delicious. Get butterbeer and the butterbeer crepe. But I do think that there are elements that maybe can be expanded in the future. I do think the investment in Fantastic Beasts prior to Fantastic Beasts maybe not turning out as successful as Warner Brothers wanted had some influence on the pivots that they made. I don't think that by any means is incomplete, but I do think the sights of the world and then going to that ride or that show are the main appeal, but I don't think that there's necessarily a ton of stuff to do. There's like some street performers and people going around. If you're a Wizarding World fan though, you will not be disappointed by what Epic Universe has to offer. And that kind of concludes our visit to the Four Lands. For the grand opening ceremony, they put us in front of the water feature facing the hotel and showed us this incredible water show that had a combination of music from all the lands. There were little segments themed after the lands. Tons of fireworks, tons of lights going on. It was incredible. I don't know the fireworks and drone elements I don't think are going to be recreated, but I think on certain nights or maybe every night you'll be able to see that water show and you get a great view of it from almost any part of Celestial Park. They do a great job of letting you see this central area from any spot. And I will say that I've said it a few times, experiencing Epic Universe at night creates a whole new experience. All the different lands come to life in a different way. Stardust Racers has lights on the vehicles. Dark Universe has so many cool light elements. Super Nintendo World looks so much more like vibrant and immersive at night. There's a lot going on in each land at night. So I do recommend maybe just doing a pass through each of the lands. My experience at Epic Universe those 2 times, I'm dying to go back. I'm a West Coast kid, so I have Universal Studios Hollywood, but I am dying to go back to Epic Universe. It is so much fun stepping into those 4 portals and experiencing Celestial Park. The food is incredibly good for not just a theme park, just incredibly good, period. Each of the lands have great dishes. Celestial Park, if I went back, I wouldn't know what I would get for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because I have more than 3 choices that I would like to have again. There are so many good things, but that PB&J cone is most likely the top thing. Get the PB&J cone and get the butterbeer crepe for your dessert, and then maybe make some choices from there. The diversity of rides is incredible, having 2 shows that are technically impressive, tons of merch to pick up, lots of great things to purchase if you're somebody that likes your souvenirs and your knickknacks. And then Celestial Park and Stardust Racers and Constellation Carousel, stuff that don't have an IP associated with them at all, are still very, very well done. Stardust Racers made me a believer in coasters. It actually made me more of a coaster fan than I've ever been in my years of life. So yeah, credit to Stardust Racers for doing that. I think Epic Universe is the new benchmark for a theme park. I do think that creating this land that uses this storytelling of stepping through these portals allows them to do what a lot of the theme parks, they kind of bring in tie-in properties and they connect them, but they want to make it make sense for the land. They don't have enough space. Epic Universe just said like, look, we want to take these 4 properties. Here's the concept we're coming up with. And it allowed them to do a lot more with the design of everything. But bringing those 4 worlds to life is an achievement. There's no feeling better than walking into these worlds that you know and you've seen in movies or TV or video games or books, and seeing them realize, seeing Igor walking around, seeing Mario taking pictures with people, seeing Toothless photo opportunity with this animatronic Toothless. There's just so many things to do, see, eat, and buy within Epic Universe, and it is all fantastic. I think the best way to describe it is epic. It's a little cheesy to say it, but it is epic, and Epic Universe deserves that moniker. I want to say a big thank you to Universal Studios for having us out to both the preview and the grand opening. They did pay for some flights and some lodging, and food was provided at many of these events. So thank you again to Universal Studios for providing that. And thank you for watching today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed this really detailed, long form look into Epic Universe. We've done it for a few different theme parks, and I hope to do it again in the future. I hope to be back to Epic Universe to show you more of the world, maybe give you more detailed look at some of the other elements within the park or specific elements in the park. But that's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.